Welcome. You're listening to The Weather Lounge, a podcast by WeatherWorks. Get ready to explore the world of weather and connect with engaging guests, bringing you fun and thought provoking stories of just how weather shapes our lives, sometimes in ways you've never imagined. So, join us as we unravel the mysteries of the atmosphere. Today's episode starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Weather Lounge, your favorite go-to podcast about weather. I'm your host, meteorologist Brad Miller, and I would like to thank you for joining us from our WeatherWorks headquarters in Hackettstown, New Jersey. And joining me again today on the pod is the one and only meteorologist Jen Diorio. Jen's a little bit under the weather.
A little bit, yeah. If
Yeah.
anyone hears the slight hoarseness in my throat, yes. But we're feeling good enough to do the pod today. So happy to be here, Brad.
Yeah, it's always weird to get. I mean, I've had them too. You get a cold in the summer. Well, although you know what, we haven't had much summer. I forgot about that here in the Northeast. I mean, it's
This
just
is
been.
true. But every June I get a cold. So it's pretty much part of my yearly cycle. So
Yeah, the pattern that's just been. I mean, finally, it looks like as we head into the third week here of June, it's gonna finally break here. We're gonna get into somewhere. We're gonna basically go from 50s and 60s to like 90s and heat indexes, near 100 next week.
yeah, pretty dramatic change. Pretty dramatic change.
Yeah. So, well, finally beach weather. We can get to.
I'll take that.
I
I'll take
agree. I'm
that.
I'm with you. I'm ready for a couple of months of good summer weather. So.
Yes.
It's always a good time here in the Weather Lounge. So, Jen, we already a couple of weeks now into the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season.
Yep.
No name storms yet, which is odd. Usually we get like that subtropical A storm in like May or early June.
That is true. Yeah, we haven't had anything yet. Especially with all the wet weather we've been having,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I am assuming things will start to ramp up here shortly.
yeah, and and that brings us to our guest today, and he's been with the long range team also, and he's one of our hurricane folks here at WeatherWorks.
Yes, indeed. Our very own Steve Coppertino is in the house. So let's bring him in and have a little chat about the tropics. Steve, welcome back to the Weather Lounge.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to be back. Definitely looking forward to talk about another hurricane season here.
Yeah, and it's just been a lousy pattern, like you said, or like we've been talking about here in the Northeast with just the normal weather. But what's our? I mean, WeatherWorks. We released our outlook here about a month ago. And you're here, Steve, just to kind of talk about that. Compare us to Colorado State, which is of course a big publication that comes out from it was Dr. Gray back in the day, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
and now it's
Clot's back.
right, Philip Klotzbach, who I've actually interviewed before a long time ago, back in my TV days. And of course, we have the National Hurricane Center. So Steve, give us just a quick overview of what to expect here in the Atlantic this year.
Yeah, sure. Super quick. We're still thinking it's going to be a slightly above average year here. Thinking about 15 to 19 storms, 6 to 9 hurricanes, and of those, about 3 to 5 major hurricanes. Just for some context, the average is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 majors. And looking at the other numbers here, Colorado State is projecting 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 majors. And I think NOAA has 13 to 19 named storms. And I'm not too sure about what their hurricane range is. I believe it's 6 to 10 and 3 to 5 majors,
So everyone's kind of on the same page, I guess.
more so than usual. The factors in play are much different than last year. Overall, I mean, it, once you get into the main development region of the Atlantic, which is basically from the Lesser Antilles to Africa, the sea surface temperatures there are nowhere near as warm as they were last year. In fact, since we put out the outlook, they've actually cooled a little bit. So overall, that kind of favors. You really have to chop off some storms when you get that kind of configuration. The real warm water in the Atlantic is kind of displaced well off to the north, basically from the southeastern coast of the United States, Bermuda, and then all the way out to like Portugal and portions of Europe, where they've been having some pretty major heat waves lately. But that kind of plays back into what I just brought up, that the overall configuration of the Atlantic this year, from a sea surface temperature standpoint, is just really the opposite of what you'd want to see for a very active year. It still doesn't mean that we can't see things shift around in the coming months, and I do think we will, but that's just one of the things that really is starting to show up.
And is that kind of the same reasoning that this year is not supposed to be as busy as last year? Although last year we had that big lull in the middle of the summer, I believe, didn't we? Then it really ramped up in late August into September.
Yeah, last year was crazy for the kind of wrong reasons early on in this season. It was actually record quiet from about July to basically this second week of September. And then, yeah, things really picked up. There's a bunch of reasons why the Atlantic wasn't that favorable during that usual peak of the season. But yeah, it just boiled down to a lot of stability, dry air. A lot of the tropical waves were getting chopped up. So it really cut down on the overall number of storms. But then obviously we had a pretty substantial uptick in October and into November.
Yeah, and of course, Hurricane Helene was a big headline.
Yeah, we had some pretty destructive storms last year. Helene, Milton. It was certainly a uh, very damaging year. Maybe not, the craziest season in terms of named storms, but still extremely costly.
Yeah, and Helene was actually more destructive the further it went inland. Unfortunately, I mean, yeah, it made its
And ahead of
landfall,
the
of
main
course.
storm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what happened. A lot of folks don't they forget what happened before Helene got to North Carolina. I mean, there was already flooding going on, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's correct. There was a big upper level low parked over the Ohio Valley, and that was just essentially drawing up all the tropical moisture over the southeast and the Gulf right into that. And with the mountains there, it just kind of wrings out that moisture, and they were already getting a tremendous amount of rain. And yeah, once you threw in a landfalling major hurricane in the mix, it was just an absolute disaster. And I mean, some of those areas are still trying to clean up and recover.
Yeah, it was unfortunately the perfect setup for them. Like you said, they had the upper level low, and then that entail, brought in the track of Helene. It kind of pulled it basically northwest almost, and into those areas. And not only that, I mean, the wind was. I mean, I remember seeing some 80, 90 mile an hour gusts on top of some of those North Carolina mountains, and then, add in the ridiculous amount of rain, unfortunately, and just it was just yeah, it was just a bad recipe for that area, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, it was a terrible situation. I think it was in many areas it set the all-time records for river levels, daily rainfall amounts, weekly rainfall amounts, everything. So hopefully we don't see anything near that this year.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a slow moving tropical system. I mean, yeah, we're gonna have them every year. They're gonna make landfall regardless, and you don't want them lingering like that. You want them to make landfall and kind of be moving on their way, and do whatever they do and then be gone. But that one unfortunately was that was a bad one. I guess I don't know if it's been retired. I'm sure it will be by the World Meteorological Organization.
Yeah, I have to assume that Helene and Milton will be retired. Milton did obviously a ton of damage in Florida as well and had a pretty prolific tornado outbreak. So
Oh, I sorry, yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah, yeah, that was wild in and of itself, and also had not really, apples to apples, the same situation with a lot of heavy rain out ahead of it, but it was pretty bad.
So, with our publication that went out about a month ago, Steve, talk about La Nina. I know that's a more a Pacific thing, but it does impact the Atlantic, and I guess that's why we're going to have a little less busy year here in the Atlantic.
Yeah, that's correct. Last year, I mean, there was a pretty solid La Nina, and that definitely helped really increase confidence for an active year. This year, it's more wishy-washy. Really, it kind of a neutral phase right now, which really isn't an El Nino and really isn't a La Nina, but overall, we're favoring a cool neutral, which is close to the threshold of La Nina, but it's not quite there. Um, it's still relatively favorable for an active hurricane season, but um, it's really when you have more of a neutral kind of aspect to the ENSO. Um, it's really your hurricane seasons are really controlled by little pulses of upward motion and sinking motion that tend to make their way east with time. It's hard to predict, but it's just something we're really gonna have to focus on this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we hear about the Pacific and things, but it's all we've talked about this in other podcasts. It's all connected, whether it's the basically the big oscillations that go around the globe, but there's the La Ninas, El Ninos, and then of course you have all the other big global connections as we look for and things like this for not only wintertime, wintertime trends, summertime trends, but also in the tropics. So that's something that we always, or you guys at least on the long range team, use a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah, you'll hear stuff about like the Madden Julian oscillation and
The old
whatnot,
MGO,
and
oh, it's coming into phases 1, 8, and 2 next year in the winter. Look out.
yep, that old theme too. And yeah, I mean, like I said, with the rising and the sinking motion, that's really gonna kind of dominate the season here. But I I really could see that also kind of not being a factor and just really just some random uptakes in activity here and there.
And now what about, Steve, the Bermuda High placement this summer? Um, how is that gonna impact, some of our storm development or paths or, really kinda tie into our hurricane season this year?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So overall, I think for the most part, we're gonna see the Bermuda High really displaced off to the north, mainly near Atlantic Canada. I do think it's gonna slosh back and forth at times, but that would overall favor more tracks out to sea. I do think we're gonna have, when everything's said and done, a semi-permanent presence of um, an upper level low over the Ohio Valley, and that may help to draw some storms closer to the southeastern United States coast and perhaps into portions of the western Gulf Coast if we can get some storms to form there. But that'll really have to be kind of nailed down on a storm by storm basis. But a lot of the years that we've looked at in the past, some of the years like 2012, 2017, 2023 and 2011 to kind of just name a few, have really followed that trend with a good deal of storms out to sea and then a couple that do manage to hit land.
Yeah, I mean it always comes down to the timing, obviously, with where's the Bermuda High? We get a storm that comes across the Atlantic, and is it Bermuda High, west favored at that point, or is it east favored? Of course, east favored would kind of steer it more out to sea, but the further west it can get, the further west the storm can get then, and before it can make that crucial turn, of course, before it gets caught up in the westerlies versus the Bermuda High, and it's it's yeah, like you said, it's storm by storm a lot of times. Like you said, you have an idea where things are going to be, but it always comes down to what's going on across the U.S. 2 to 3 days from now when this storm makes its closest approach or comes through the island chain and gets close to Cuba and Bahamas and things like that. So
Yeah, exactly. And during some of those years, we had, I'm sure everybody or most folks who remember follow the tropics remember Irma back in 2017. Initially, that looked like it was going to go out to sea, but you had some pretty big changes with the Bermuda High. It was NOAA actually decided to send up a bunch of extra balloons over the United States, and that actually wound up leading to a pretty substantial shift with the track, and it wound up crossing the entire Atlantic. And in 2018, with Florence, it was kind of the same deal. Looked like it was going to go way out to sea, but there were some adjustments at the last second. High was a little bit stronger and was able to go all the way west.
Yeah, and I feel like in recent years too, we've been seeing a lot of storms tracking, especially I feel like in the Gulf. Um, and kind of developing there and then hitting somewhere along the Gulf Coast. And I know the western kind of side of Florida has been really getting smacked, which is kind of a little bit of an anomaly for, the last however many years. But it kind of seems now like this year it's more of a normal risk for kind of some of those Atlantic tracks, meaning that, kind of returning to about average.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. And as far as the western coast of Florida, I mean, I want to say that the risk is reduced quite a bit from last year. So far, we've been seeing shear and just trade winds in general in the Caribbean much higher than normal, which tends to rip apart thunderstorms, and that looks like it should continue for at least the next month or so. So,
Okay. So that's a positive for them.
yeah, yeah, hopefully we can maintain that deep into the season. But yeah, again, our main focus would be for central and western portions of the Gulf Coast this year, which is pretty much true in every single year.
The other wild card here is we always talk about is the SAL, the Saharan air layer. Yeah, and I guess last year was the reason why it was so quiet in early in the season where it was supposed to start getting busier. I mean, was that the main reason? I can't remember, but that always comes into play even, every single year.
Yeah, yeah. So there were two really important things going on with that last year. The wave track that goes over Africa was everyone knew it was going to be more active and a little bit displaced to the north, but it was actually displaced way too far north. So you had these tropical waves going over the Saharan desert, which, as you can imagine, isn't really the most favorable thing. So these waves, they're very strong and they have, decent circulations and they're picking up all that dust. And by the time they were exiting Africa, they were exiting into cooler water and they just really fell apart.
Yeah, I can remember some really good waves that you start to look all the way into Central Africa and wow, this one's definitely, and then all of a sudden it hits the water and just fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, we had waves coming off in Morocco and, areas that it's just way too far north. Sea surface temperatures in that area were actually below normal too, so that was also helping to inject stable, cool air into these waves. So, it was just really a rough go. I do think that the wave track looks like it's going to be a little bit more on the active side as well, but with sea surface temperatures being a little bit cooler in the eastern Atlantic and central Atlantic, I don't think there's going to be a huge risk for these things to immediately start to strengthen. It might be more of a gradual, we're watching this wave for 5 days before it starts to get in the Western Caribbean and Southwest Atlantic, before things really start to pick up.
Yeah, I remember in the old days of the Dr. Masters blog, and
Yeah,
Steve was a part of too. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of folks.
ever since I
Yeah,
was a little kid, yep.
yeah, and Levi was always a big. His videos used to come out, and everyone would be checking those out back in the day. This is going back to what 2006, 2007, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I started in 2006 here. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah, yeah. So
crazy.
it was always a go-to when the tropics got busy and everyone would be talking about what they would see and what they would think with the pattern and but yeah, those days those tropical days were, and that was when I lived down in the southeast too, and I was always I think it was the first year I was down there, we evacuated for Hurricane Florence. I can't remember what year it was, but they reversed the highways, and I've never been a part of that before. And they want you to get out to I-95. I was in Charleston at the time, and they want you to get out there so you can either go north or south. And man, what a mess! I'll tell you.
That's a sight to see.
Oh no, wait, it was a Floyd fiasco. That's what it was. That's what they
Ah,
renamed
that's
it.
right.
The
Yep.
Floyd fiasco. Yeah, because people were stuck on the highway, and at the time we didn't have like GPS on our phones, and there was just flip phones at the time, and
Right.
so we grabbed the map and
You're
just went
dating
north.
yourself over there, Brad.
I know, but we ended up just going north into North Carolina and kind of staying ahead of the storm instead of waiting on I-26, where everyone was running out of gas, cars were overheating, it was like 95 degrees. And a funny thing, well, not funny, but when we came back a couple of days later, there were so many cars on the sides of the roads when the storm passed, and it ended up not hitting. It just turned enough to catch eastern North Carolina, but it was always became known as the Floyd fiasco. Never forget that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a lot of the models actually had it hitting the east coast, the space coast of Florida, and then going up to your guys' neck of the woods there when it was like a Category 3 or 4
Yeah,
hurricane.
it was a biggie. Yeah, yeah. And the only one that sticks in my mind was Gaston. That was one that was sitting off the South Carolina coast. It was only a tropical storm. It wasn't really supposed to strengthen, but within 24 hours, it became a hurricane.
That's
And
right.
it just kind of went north. I think it really impacted Myrtle Beach and up into eastern North Carolina again. But parts, where I was down in Charleston, and we still had some good weather. And it was funny. Our chief meteorologist was actually out of town too, and he had to fly back home in time because it wasn't supposed to do anything. But that's one thing he always used to say was a hurricane can make or break a TV station. It was just, especially in the hurricane prone areas. So it was just you got to have all hands on deck for that kind of stuff because people, it's you don't mess around with that kind of stuff down there.
Oh no, definitely not. And I mean, I could see something like Gaston happening this year, especially as we get into late August into September, if we have something kind of stalling off the southeastern United Coast and is able to strengthen decently fast. I could see a track right into the Carolinas. So yeah, that's certainly something to watch.
Yeah. So along those lines, where are you seeing like the most favored tracks this year? I mean, or less favored versus most favored.
Less favored, I would say, would be the Eastern to Central Caribbean. I think reasons I talked about before, the trade winds and shear, it's just going to be too hostile. It's going to rip apart a lot of those waves. I think, I think a lot of the storms that, if they do develop, we're talking about 30, 40 west, they'll really have a hard time heading all the way west, probably just recurve east of Bermuda. I do think we're going to see a decent amount of storms that form from frontal boundaries and these kind of cutoffs that we were talking about earlier
Yeah,
in the
like we were just saying,
podcast.
the
Yeah,
stalled fronts and things like that.
exactly. That kind of
Homegrown
non-tropical
storms.
development. Yeah, exactly. So that's going to be something to watch. And those usually take a couple of days to gain enough thunderstorm activity to transition over to tropical storms. So usually we have a pretty good amount of lead time with those. But yeah, I'm always concerned about homegrown activity. If you get a stalled cold front like Gaston off the coast or something like the Humbertos from like 2007, where you just have this innocuous area of thunderstorms develop into a hurricane in a day. I mean, the Gulf is very warm. Southeastern United States coast is very warm. So those are the areas I'd be a little bit concerned about this year.
It's always interesting to watch how the season unfolds. I mean, like you said, we haven't had a name yet, which is a little bit unusual. I mean, granted, the season doesn't start until June 1st, but it seems like Jen and I were talking about, you always get that early storm, subtropical system somewhere, in the Atlantic or Southeast, but it really hasn't even been a hint of anything going.
No, there were some long range fake outs by the American
Like
model.
that. Yeah. The old GFS. Yeah.
Yep,
After the
yep.
middle of May has always got that phantom hurricane in like hour
Phantom
360.
hurricane.
Yeah. It's like the snowstorms in the winter. It's always got that phantom storm.
It's a huge bias in the model. It likes to spin up the what's called the Central American gyre. Sometimes it happens, but it this year it actually favored the Eastern Pacific, and they just had their fifth named storm develop. Eric looks like that's going to be a pretty formidable hurricane, potentially hit near Acapulco near a major hurricane.
Oh, I remember that. It devastated them.
Yeah, there was Otis the other year that hit right
Okay.
around there
That's what.
too.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Looks like this one could be a pretty nasty hit too, but we'll see how that tracks.
Yeah. I remember, unfortunately, that wasn't really forecasted all that well either. That
Oh, not at all.
the
Not at
Otis
all.
storm.
Yeah.
It's
What year was that?
I believe that was 2023.
Yeah, it was just like a couple of years ago. I remember. Yeah, it was sitting off the west coast of Acapulco there, and it just it made a northeast turn, basically went right into it.
Yeah, exploded from basically a tropical storm to a Category 5
within like 24 hours, right?
Yeah. Pressure dropped about 15 millibars in like one recon pass. It was a worst case scenario for a city along the coast like that, and that's always something I'm concerned about, especially with warm sea surface temperatures.
Yeah, you gotta wonder if something like that could ever happen, like in the Gulf. And it has though before. It just it repeats itself and something like that.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's have a little fun with the names. We always do this. We'll go down the list here. Again, the names are repeated every 6 years, so unless it gets retired, of course. So this year the first name is Andrea. I don't remember an Andrea back in what would have been 2019,
2019, 2013, and then 2007. Andrea 2007 was like a I think it was just like a
I remember
tropical
Andrea,
storm.
but it's just nothing
Yeah,
slipped my mind.
nothing crazy. And we got Barry.
I feel like Barry.
Anything crazy with Barry?
Yeah.
We got
Chantal.
Dexter.
I remember a couple
Chantal.
Chantals, yeah.
Yeah.
Now the D name is different, I think. Isn't that one retired from Dexter? What was the D storm in 2019?
Dorian. That was so now that's a good example of something blowing up pretty fast. Yeah, that was a Category 5. One of the stronger Category 5s that we've had in the last decade or so. Really, really nasty storm. Originally, it was supposed to be making landfall along the east coast of Florida as a major hurricane, but thankfully it turned north.
And that was a quiet year, actually. I'm just looking back. I mean, that was the D name storm. It wasn't until September 6th. I mean, that was after Labor Day that we had the D storm.
Yeah, exactly. That was
came after a really active 2018.
Right.
Yeah. It was one of the quieter years, and it was one of the most impactful storms of the year. And I mean, that really goes to show that you could have a storm like that develop in any year, even if it's quiet. Kind of like the old Andrew thing that everyone used to talk about.
Erin.
Now you know what piques my interest about Erin is, unfortunately, it brings you back to 9/11. Now,
that's right.
That storm, it was a hurricane, and we had a cold front actually go through, I guess, on September 10th. A big cold front went all the way across the Northeast. One of those big cool shots that come in like late summer, early fall almost, and that was what kind of kicked Erin out to sea. But there was a formidable hurricane, offshore, and that cold front on the 10th actually kind of swept it further east and kind of protected the Northeast from anything. But that's the only thing I remember about Erin, because I remember them talking about a hurricane offshore.
Yeah, that's right. And it was obviously a beautiful day on September 11th.
Yeah, the weather was not an issue. Fernand, I don't know if that was. I don't remember.
That used to be Florence, I believe.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that could have been Florence. Yeah, in 2000. That would have been 2013, probably, when I got it retired. Was that the year that created all the damage? Oh, we're gonna have to check on that. They say just Google it.
Fact check. Yeah.
Florence had to get retired at some point.
That would have been, I think that was 2018. One sec. Let me do some.
Yeah, that's what I
2018
was
it was retired. Yeah, it was retired.
Apparently we had a Fernand.
Okay. Just not memorable, I guess.
Yeah.
Then Gabrielle.
I kind of remember a couple of Gabrielles. And there's your Umberto, Steve.
Yeah, there's Umberto.
Yeah, that was the one that blew up back in 2007. What else do we have? Imelda.
I remember an Imelda, but couldn't tell you. But
I think that was, one sec.
Igor? Going all the way back to Igor?
I think that used to be Ingrid.
Ingrid? Okay. I know Igor was probably before that one, yeah.
Yeah, Igor was 2010, I want to say.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. Jerry, we got a Hurricane Jerry.
Jerry, yeah, Sean and Rob will like that one.
Yeah. Now, hold on. The
Seinfeld
next
fans.
name is got to be. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Social media will have a.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a meme.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hurricane Karen.
Hurricane Karen. Here comes Hurricane Karen. Yeah.
We got Lorenzo. That was actually a Category 5 way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
back in
I remember that.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Nestor. For all the
Excuse me, you
Yankees
missed
fans.
Melissa.
Oh, sorry.
But then yes, Nestor for all.
Yankee fans will be on Nasty Nestor.
Nasty
Although he's not
Nestor,
with
But
yeah.
are you a Yankees fan too? I know Steve and I are.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Brad's a diehard Yankees fan.
Central Jersey. Oh yeah.
We always chat.
Not been looking so good the last couple of days
Wow.
though.
Yeah.
Let's save that for the sports podcast.
I know we got to get it together. We'll get them tonight.
Yeah.
Now you get
All
into the meat of the storms. When you get into the O's and P's, Olga, Pablo, they're usually nasty storms. A lot of those letters have been retired too. So
yeah, these are always interesting ones. The Rebecca with a K. Got Tanya, Van, Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy. Yeah, a
Sebastian.
couple of those late. Yeah,
Sebastian.
those have been retired. Wilma going back to the W storm.
Yes, Wilma.
Yep.
That's gone. But I think Van's a new one too. Van had to replace something. I don't remember a Van.
I don't know if we've gotten that far.
Yeah, maybe we haven't. May go back to
because that would have been
several years.
2001, 2006, 13, 19.
Yeah, what was the year that went deep into the Greek alphabet? What was that 2000?
That was 2020.
Oh, okay.
Right, it was the Florida.
2005
Florida
and
systems,
2020. Yeah, they got rid of the Greek alphabet.
Yeah, they did
stuff
now.
because it's too confusing.
What do they do now? I'm
There's
sure
an
we
auxiliary
covered this last
list.
year.
Yeah, they have a whole nother list.
There's a whole secondary list, right?
Yeah, and hopefully we never get back to that. But if those get retired, they'll replace the auxiliary list too.
And just looking at 2026 really quick, hurricane. We have an Isaias, which
that was
no, thank you.
I'm
No, thank
surprised
you.
that one wasn't retired.
Yeah. For everyone at home, that was a pretty bad.
That was a tornado outbreak, right? Or no, the flooding. That was the flooding, right?
No, that was Ida. Was the really bad flooding.
Yeah.
Which got
Okay.
retired, but Isaias was the wind. I know for me personally, like on Long Island, Hurricane Sandy, I lost power for 5 minutes. Isaias made it through the whole thing, and then a lot of like surrounding neighborhoods lost power, and then PSE&G, in attempt to fix their power, caused us to lose power for a week.
Oh, great.
And so, yeah, that was fun. And we were like, how did this happen? How did we not lose power during Sandy? And we lost it for almost a week, and it was from human error. But
that's why you always got to be ready. But yeah, that was a nasty little tornado outbreak there. Next season we have a bunch of storms or a bunch of names that'll be different. So, but we'll get into that.
We'll
next
cross
year.
that bridge. When we
So,
yeah, exactly.
So real quick, the only WeatherWorks staff member I see is Aaron O'Neill.
Yep, that's it for this year.
We'll have to let Aaron know. That's Steve's forecast buddy in the summertime.
Yeah, that's true. Up in Massachusetts.
Yeah, Aaron. So I think that's it. I don't think we have any other names that are.
No.
So anything bad that happens out in the tropics with Aaron, it's her fault. So
yeah, I'll let her forecast that one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I mean, I think we kind of covered everything. Anything else, Steve, you want to add, or?
Not really. No, I think we had a nice, well-rounded discussion. As always, just because it's been, if it's going to be quiet for another month or whatever, just stay prepared and be ready for things to turn on a dime. It's happened before, and just always be ready.
Yeah, everyone's worried about a busy season, not a busy season. It's just the old adage used to be, it just takes one storm to make it a memorable year. So
yes,
and we've seen that. Like we just talked about Dorian. We had 3 storms going into September that year, and boom, Cat 5 that just devastated parts of.
Sat over the Bahamas for about a day.
Yeah, yeah. So for Jen and Steve, and of course our fine producer, meteorologist Mike Priante behind the scenes here, and we thank him for all his dedicated work here on the Weather Lounge. And again, we'll notify you when you subscribe to the Weather Lounge and follow us on all the big social media platforms. And of course, visit us at weatherworksinc.com. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of the Weather Lounge podcast. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on all your favorite podcasting platforms so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have questions or comments? Just email us at weatherlounge@weatherworksinc.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can also learn more about our parent company, WeatherWorks, by visiting weatherworksinc.com and checking them out on social media as well. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, stay curious and stay weather-wise.